Lawmakers introduced a bill to legalize a euthanasia pill in the Nevada state legislature. Assembly Bill 346 would allow a terminally ill patient to request to end their life. The patient must be at least 18 years old, be diagnosed with a terminal condition by at least 2 practitioners, be mentally capable of making such a decision, and their decision must be voluntary. The Catholic Church is working to inform Catholic voters.
We're also sending out different publications and notices through the conference to our parishes. They'll be posted on the Nevada Catholic Conference's website for the faithful and those that are interested to see what the church's position is again. But we're also going to be encouraging the faithful to contact their local representatives and encourage them to also vote against this AB 346 or the euthanasia pill.
The motion before us on HB 254 is ought to pass, and I would ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
11 yeas, 7 nays.
The option for terminally ill patients to end their lives is one step closer to becoming a reality in the state of New Hampshire. The state's House Judiciary Committee voted in favor of a bill that would allow terminally ill adults the option to take life-ending medication. House Bill 254, or the New Hampshire End-of-Life Freedom Act, now heads to the full state House for a vote. A similar bill was approved by the House in 2024, but rejected by the New Hampshire Senate. Jim Towey, founder and CEO of Aging with Dignity, and his son, Jamie, vice president of Advocacy, join me now to talk about the growing trend of these euthanasia bills. Jim and Jamie, it's such a pleasure to have you both here with us today.
Thanks, Abby.
Thanks for having us.
Now, Jim, I know you were a friend and trusted advisor of Mother Teresa, who's actually one of the patronesses of this show. Can you explain how she laid the foundation for the work you're doing now?
Well, I met her for the first time in 1985 in Calcutta, and she told me to go to her home for the dying. And when I did, I saw there how these people who had come in from the streets were cared with such tenderness and compassion. They were known by name. Their pain was managed, and their spiritual, personal, emotional needs were met. And so it really left an impression on me that you don't have to, at the end of life, have the finest medical care as long as you are able to love and to be loved. And of course, she said that was the greatest need a person had.
That's amazing. And Jamie, turning back to these euthanasia bills, what is the biggest challenge of the battle?
I think it's twofold. I mean, I think first of all, for decades now, groups like Compassion and Choices have been waging kind of this Orwellian push to change language about this. Their very name, Compassion and Choices, well, who's against both of those things? But of course, what they stand for is a push for these physician-assisted suicide bills, which, you know, they normalize suicide, they destroy the doctor-patient relationship, they discriminate against the disabled, introduce perverse cost savings incentives. And so our job, I think, is to create a message that of hope, and that these are not the right answers to real problems. And that turns, I think, to the second side of this, which is that you have to address the underlying issues that are driving people to this. There's a reason why people find this appealing, and it's because they're not getting good care. They're not being accompanied like Mother Teresa did with her patients. And so focusing on these underlying issues that are driving people there and helping improve care and ensuring that people are loved at the end of life, I think is going to get rid of most of the desire for these bills.
I think you're exactly right. And now you're leading a project called Assisted Suicide Watch. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, well, that's you know, we're trying to do our part. So Assisted Suicide Watch is our new research project that is going to shine a light on these practices, on these bills, and the effect that they have on society, and particularly on the vulnerable, on the disabled, on the poor, on minorities, because that's where we see the greatest threats to human dignity, is on the people that can't help themselves.
Thank you. And then, Jim, you have a guide for people who are at end of life that guides them through making decisions. What should Catholics be aware of when making decisions like this?
Well, they should know their rights under the Patient Self-Determination Act to make medical decisions and how they want to be treated at the end of life. And so I developed 5 wishes with Mother Teresa's blessing. She had urged me to found Aging with Dignity. And 5 Wishes is a legal document. Now 40-some million Americans have it. But it's also a guide for family discussions. And it talks about not only questions about feeding tubes, ventilators, and some of the things no one wants to talk about, but it talks about comfort, how I want to be treated, how I want to be remembered, all the things that matter to an individual. I had the privilege to live in the home for people with AIDS that Mother opened in Washington, and I saw what mattered to these men and women as they died. And so it's basic. Nothing's changed over millennia. these same matters play out at the end of life. And so Five Wishes has been now supported, endorsed by Cardinal Dolan and Cardinal O'Malley and Bishop Burbidge and Archbishop Wensky. So many bishops have come forward and said, yeah, we want our parishioners to know that this is a helpful tool, and we've been thrilled with the response we've gotten.
That's incredible. Now, you both touched on a little bit of how compassion is being used and weaponized in this conversation. And there's a case recently in Spain where a father is fighting for the life of his daughter who attempted to take her life, became paraplegic, and is now attempting to die by euthanasia. What would you say to this young woman in response to just like the pain that she's feeling?
Well, her pain should be managed, and she also should know she's not her illness, or her condition. She's made in the image and likeness of God, to affirm that their life matters, that they're a gift, that they're not a burden, and that people are going to accompany her. People look at someone in a wheelchair and they go, gee, I would never want to live if I were in a wheelchair. But when they're in the wheelchair, they see life has beauty and meaning and purpose. So we need to pain manage better. We need to listen to patient wishes, have discussions about treatment options that are available. And so I think a lot of this is a revolution in healthcare to make it more human. A lot of assisted suicide, I think, is a push toward dehumanizing care, and I think it's dangerous for our disabled. I don't know, Jamie, if you want to add to that. He's been a great son, and we love having Aging with Dignity, but he feels he can interrupt me, so here's
Well, I clearly don't. I didn't interrupt you. No, I think you just see these stories all over the place, and the fact is pain is one of those aspects at the end of life and when people are dealing with serious illness that is the most resonant for people, because we've all experienced pain and we've all watched loved ones suffer, and I think that's almost harder than experiencing pain. But again, the answer to this is always care. It's always to care for the person, to validate them, to make them know that they're loved. The answer to this is not to push people towards the exits, and I think we just have to always fall on the side of care for the patient, love the patient, don't give them this false solution to their problem.
Indeed. Now, you both know our Holy Father has been very sick. Can you speak to just, one, the coverage that's been going around it, and then also just what witness this is to sickness and aging with dignity?
Well, he's going through a series of challenges that are very familiar to people in their late 80s and 90s, and so he's going to continue to see a growing dependence. He's going to see debilitation. But his life is as beautiful as before. He's not his illness, and I think he's going to be teaching us a lot about how to manage serious illness, because his eyes are on heaven. And I think the more that we people of faith remind ourselves of the eternal dimension of life, that this isn't our lasting home, the more faithfully we can accept the cross that comes with aging.
Amen.
And I would just add, Pope John Paul II, back when he was Pope, was a titan for my parents and for their generation. I only remember him when he was struggling with Parkinson's, and I watched him in those kind of final days and years of his life, and it made a huge impression on me as to how you could handle that stuff with dignity. And we saw how Pope Benedict kind of made a decision at the end of his papacy to kind of enter into that chapter of his life. And so with Pope Francis, I think he's already been serving as an incredible witness to how to deal with suffering and how to live with dignity, and people who are young now are going to remember it.
Thank you both so much just for the work that you do and for your beautiful message. I know our AWTN family will continue to pray for you and your work.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We're glad to be here.